My parents sued me for the house I built with my own hands, calling me ungrateful. But in court, the truth my lawyer revealed left everyone speechless. Hi Reddit, my name is Sarah. I am 28, and I am here to share a story that I still cannot fully believe happened to me. If someone had told me 2 years ago that my own parents would one day drag me into court over a house I built with my own hard work, I would have laughed. I would have thought they were joking. But sometimes, life does not wait for you to be ready. It just throws you into the fire, and you have no choice but to walk through it. Growing up, my family was never rich. We were just ordinary people trying to get by. My dad worked long hours, my mom managed the home, and I learned from an early age that if I wanted something, I had to earn it. Maybe that is why I became so determined to build a home of my own. For most girls my age, the dream was a wedding or a big party. But for me, the dream was simple, a house where I could finally feel safe, free, and independent. I started saving for my first job at 19. It wasn't much, but every paycheck, I put away a small amount. I gave up vacations, I gave up shopping sprees, I gave up nights out with friends. People called me boring. They said I was too serious for my age. But I knew what I was doing. I was building my future brick by brick, even if no one else could see it. By the time I turned 26, I had enough saved to buy a piece of land. It wasn't huge, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I remember standing on that empty plot, just dirt and grass, and telling myself, one day, I'll build something here. One day, this will be home.
And I did.
I worked with a small team. I oversaw every detail. I even picked out the tiles myself. Every corner of that house carried my sweat, my effort, and my dreams. When it was finally done, I felt a kind of pride I cannot even put into words. I invited my parents to see it. I thought they would be proud too. I thought they would hug me and say, "Sarah, we are so happy for you." But instead, something darker started to grow. At first it was small comments, my mom saying, "Well, you know you couldn't have done this without us." My dad saying, "We gave you the values that made you work hard, so this house is ours too, in a way." I brushed it off. I thought they were just joking. But the jokes turned into demands. They started saying things like, "You should put the house under our name too, because we are your parents." At first I laughed. I said, "Mom, Dad, this house is my dream. I saved for years. I worked for this." But they did not laugh back. They looked at me with cold faces and said, "We gave you life. Without us, you would have nothing. You owe us this." Reddit, can you imagine that? The very people who brought me into this world, the people I thought would be my biggest supporters, were now claiming that I owed them my house. I tried to talk to them. I tried to explain that this was something I needed for myself. But the more I spoke, the angrier they got. Until one day, I got a letter. Not a letter of love. Not a letter of apology. But a letter from a lawyer. My own parents were suing me. The lawsuit claimed that the house belonged to them because they had raised me and invested in my future. They said that by building the house, I had used family resources. None of that was true. Every penny was mine. I had the receipts. I had the bank statements. But still, seeing my parents' names on that paper, knowing they were taking me to court, it felt like someone had stabbed me straight through the heart. The day I walked into that courtroom, my hands shook. I did not want to be there. I did not want to stand against my own blood. But I had no choice. This was my dream. This was my home. And if I did not fight for it, they would take it from me. My lawyer told me to stay calm, to trust the evidence, to trust the truth. But how do you stay calm when your own parents are sitting on the other side of the room, staring at you like a stranger? I still remember the first night I slept inside that house. There was no fancy furniture yet, no decorations, and honestly, the walls still smelled like fresh paint. But I didn't care. I spread out a thin mattress on the floor. I curled up with a blanket, and I looked at the ceiling above me with tears in my eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had created a place that could not be taken away from me. I had sacrificed vacations, nights out, and even skipping meals sometimes just to save enough to finish it. I thought that home would be the foundation of my future, something that would always stand, no matter what storms came. But then my parents started changing. At first, it was little comments that I brushed off. My mom would say things like, "Well, you know we helped you raise money for this, so don't forget where it came from." Or my dad would laugh and joke, "Technically, since you're still our daughter, this house belongs to us too." I thought they were just joking around, teasing like parents do. I smiled. I laughed. I didn't take it seriously. But slowly, those jokes turned into arguments. And those arguments turned into threats. One day my mom told me straight to my face, "Sarah, you wouldn't have this house without us. We deserve a share of it. If you don't want to do what's right, then maybe you don't deserve it at all." I stood there in shock. I tried to remind her that every single paycheck came from my work. Every brick was paid for by me. I reminded her that all the sweat and blisters on my hands were mine alone. But she just looked at me coldly, as if none of that mattered. And then it happened. One afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was a court summons. My parents had actually filed a lawsuit against me. They were claiming that since I was their daughter, since they had supported me through childhood, and since they helped in some ways, the house legally belonged to them. I felt my knees go weak as I held that paper. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My own parents were dragging me to court, painting me as an ungrateful child who wanted to cut them out. I cried that night until my pillow was soaked. But as much as it hurt, something inside me snapped that day. I realized I couldn't just let them take away everything I had worked for. So, I found a lawyer. I gathered every receipt, every document, every proof that showed I paid for that land, those materials, and that construction. I was terrified, but I knew I had to fight back. When the court date finally arrived, my heart was beating so loudly that I thought everyone could hear it. My parents walked in looking confident, almost smug, like they were already certain they would win. My mother didn't even look at me. My father smiled coldly, as if to say, "You can't win against us." I sat there, my hands shaking, but my lawyer whispered to me, "Don't worry, Sarah. Just trust me. The truth will speak for itself." When the judge walked in, the room fell silent. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clutching the folder that held every piece of evidence I had gathered over the years. My parents sat on the opposite side, dressed nicely, with confident smiles on their faces, as if they had already claimed victory before the first word was even spoken. I kept thinking to myself, how could they do this to me? How could the very people who raised me become the ones trying to destroy me? As the hearing began, my parents' lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of them as loving parents who had supported their daughter financially, and he claimed that the house was built with their help and sacrifices. My mother even pretended to wipe tears from her eyes, talking about how ungrateful I had become. My father shook his head slowly, as if I had betrayed them. Every word pierced me like a knife, because I couldn't believe the people who gave me life were standing there in a courtroom, lying so boldly. Then it was my turn. My lawyer stood up and presented document after document: bank transfers, salary slips, receipts for bricks, cement, wood, tiles, and paint. Every single item that had built that house was paid for from my own account. My lawyer spoke calmly but firmly, showing that not a single dime had come from my parents. He reminded the court that I had worked day and night, that I had taken no loans, and that my parents were now attempting to claim something that was never theirs. When the judge looked at me and asked, "Do you have anything you'd like to say for yourself?" My voice trembled, but I spoke from my heart. I said, "Your Honor, this house is not just bricks and cement. It represents years of my life. Every hour I worked, every meal I skipped, every night I cried from exhaustion. It all went into building that home. And now, the people who should be protecting me are trying to take it away. I love my parents, but love does not mean letting them steal my life's work." The courtroom went silent. My parents looked shocked because they had expected me to stay quiet, to bow my head and give in like I always did at home. But that day, I was different. I was stronger. Finally, after reviewing all the evidence, the judge spoke. His words still ring in my ears. This property belongs solely to Sarah. There is no legal ground for the parents' claims. Case dismissed. My eyes filled with tears instantly. I felt relief wash over me like a wave, and I could finally breathe again. My parents looked stunned, their faces frozen in disbelief. My mother whispered something to my father, but neither of them spoke to me. They stood up and walked out without even looking back. In that moment, I realized something painful but true. Sometimes, family can be the strangers who hurt you the most. I went home that evening, opened the door to my house, and sat on the floor just like the first night I slept there. The walls were still the same, the ceiling still looked down at me, but something inside me had changed forever. I was no longer that scared girl who needed approval. I was a woman who had fought for what was hers, and won. And as I sat there, tears rolling down my cheeks, I whispered to myself, this house may be built from bricks, but it stands on my strength. And no one, not even my parents, can ever take that away from me again.